All right, and we're back. I know it's been a little bit since the last update, so I wanted to kind of go over the current portfolio, my thoughts on the market. We might be a little bit hindered because it's looking like Tasty charts are not working very well, so maybe that's on my system, but it could be a, kind of platform-wide thing. So we'll see. If you don't know who I am, I'm Ben Collins. I'm Chief Investment Officer and founder of Options Autopilot, which is an automated options trading platform. And fun note, if you ever want to see a demo on the platform and kind of what I'm doing and how I'm using it, we're going to do a live webinar this Thursday, 7 p.m. So I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to attend that. That will be Thursday at 7, and I'm also going to be giving a crazy deal for people who are attending live. So check that out, sign up, attend, and I think you'll be, happy that you did do that. So just also wanted to dive into, current positioning and my thoughts, because some of the long positions are starting to play out. Maybe they'll start to work. The government's buying into Intel supposedly. Obviously, if you've been following, I've been in Intel long calls for a while, but it hasn't really gone anywhere and kind of till that news started to come out, or it technically started to move up before that, which is very suspect. Makes me wonder if other people knew the government was going to announce something. But so far it hasn't fully benefited me. I mean, I'm up. You can see kind of year to date, up about $1,000. Finally, we're profitable. I mean, it's been sitting at a negative most of the time, but if you're new or if you recall, I'm basically not adding to my position until I'm actually up. I am now up, but I'm going to wait until it gets over 27, which would be kind of like a new high finish, I believe. Just wanted to look at this because, unfortunately, 26 is I think where I had the line. It's only showing kind of a month of time for some reason, and I tried to adjust it. But anyways, this is kind of my line in the sand. I'm not going to add until it gets a convincing close over that level, and once it does, then I'll probably add to my position. Right now we've got 10 contracts. I might add 5 contracts. Originally I was going to double my position. I just feel like it's moving up for maybe the wrong reasons. So, the news flow hasn't been, super positive. Obviously, Trump was out there talking about firing the CEO. Who knows if this is a tactic? It's just crazy that we're living in this world where the president's talking about these things. And it's not a political thing. It's just interesting. I don't necessarily think he should be involved. But, they are talking about taking a position. I don't know exactly what that means. I need to do a little more research, but it's a little bit strange to me. I don't disagree with them thinking that maybe it's a good value or maybe it's a national kind of security thing they're going to claim, but it also kind of makes me feel like, is this Russia where governments are owning private companies now? But it's different than kind of backstopping GM back in the day, I think. I don't think Intel was at risk of failing. So, but either way, wanting it to go higher, hoping it does. If it closes over 26, I'll add to my position in general. That's kind of one of the bigger ones, longer term themes that I'm thinking. I think that they have a decent amount of upside. I think CNBC was talking about them trading at basically book value at this point. So it's almost like a free option to have upside if they can kind of correct their manufacturing and what their expenses. So I agree. That's kind of why I'm taking this position. But, as I've learned over the years, it's not like stock where you're kind of buying at discounted prices, with options, even though I have leaps and I have, 852 days to expiration. I approach it differently where I'm waiting until I'm up money and then I'm going to add to my position. I just think that that's been a lesson I've had to learn over the long period of time. And same thing with RIVN. RIVN's kind of been treading water, not really going anywhere. Again, I think that it could have some positive momentum, but once it did kind of pop more recently, it's just sold off and it's not really instilling confidence in me at all. So this is where I'm just kind of sitting and waiting. I have a reasonable position already. to Rivian. It's, oh, I don't have the bid-ask spread on the desktop, I guess. Let me look here. Okay, yeah, now we have it. So, I mean, basically I have a $5,000 position in this, which is fine. I'm usually only risking 50% of that position, so I'm not going to add to it until I actually am profitable. That is kind of the game of the game. Same thing with SOFI. SOFI has been like the big quote-unquote winner, I guess, from a long perspective. You can see I'm up $10,129 on that. I closed and rolled my original position because I had less timed expiration, than I went out farther in time. And I have added, so I basically rolled and did 10 contracts. I added 2 contracts. Again, here it's getting close to a new high and a breakout. So here's again my strategy. If it finishes, I guess that finishes over 24.32. That's what I previously had drawn. I'd have to look at it again, but I think roughly if it gets over 25, kind of a round number, I'm going to add another 8 contracts. So I'll have 20 contracts on total, and then I'm just going to let it sit until I maybe add some more money to this account, and then I could justify adding it. But that's already a pretty big position. But the reason I'm willing to do that is because I'm kind of playing with house money here. I'm up 10,000, and let's see here. Basically, I have a $12,000 position on. So, my initial position I think was it was 5,000 again. So I was only risking that $2,500 is how I had it. So ultimately, I really only have the same quote unquote original risk on, and now I'm kind of adding as I make more profit, and just my plan is just let it run. A lot of times I've kind of done these positions and then I kick myself a little bit. There's always the issue of when to take profits, how to scale in and out of positions. I'm trying to have these be a little more long-term kind of directional exposure to the market, and we can kind of see that that's been pretty helpful and profitable. And again, it doesn't always work out this way, but I've tried to manage it where my downside was pretty limited and my upside is pretty high. So I think if SoFi can finally get some traction, and if rates are falling, people are refining, I think they could have pretty good quarters moving forward, and they're constantly adding things. Crypto is going to be a thing for them. I think if they can tweak some of that, then they can be even more commanding in the game. I just think that they seem to approach their business pretty intelligently, but they don't seem to get rewarded by the market. And you saw when they popped after earnings, they issued a bunch of stock, which, again, it's smart from a business perspective, but it's frustrating from an investor perspective for me to have it pop and almost seem like it's going to break out, but then it just gets immediately sold off. So there seems to be not necessarily a ton of enthusiasm still, but I think if it breaks out, it's probably shifted both sentiment-wise and fundamentals, and that's kind of why I'm using that as my line in the sands. Like I said, I'll probably add 8 contracts there. I'm already in the money, and so it'll basically be acting like synthetic stock. At some point, I'll maybe switch out and go further out, but I'll update everybody when I'm doing that in general. So that's kind of the long positions. I did add back into XRP. It kind of started to recover, and I thought I was going to then break out again. Let's see if the chart will actually work for XRP. So it wasn't for, okay, it kind of seems like it is maybe for the crypto. So yeah, then it seemed like it was breaking out again and potentially going to close. So another lesson to learn is wait for the close. I know it's a little bit harder on crypto, but I think this is when I kind of added back in because I thought it was going to maybe resume the trend. So far hasn't happened, and I only added in half my position that I had previously. So again, I'm scaling in, managing risk, and I'm only going to add once it gets another close above, what would it be, basically $3.50 or approximately $3.50. Again, it's a very small position, nothing crazy. I just think it has a decent amount of convexity if any of these sentiment again keeps pushing it or the news keeps pushing it. I feel like XRP is more of a US based kind of play to a certain degree at this point at least, but Bitcoin's kind of more global. So again, I'm not a huge crypto bull. I'm not a hater. I can see the benefit. I can see a lot of the use cases. In my opinion, if XRP could maybe replace all this real estate, titling and all these types of things, that would be pretty huge in addition to any kind of banking. I think that would eliminate a lot of the stupid costs you have to pay anytime you transact in real estate. But keep in mind that I think someone has told this to me, I don't know if it's true, the real estate lobbying group for the political lobbying for real estate is very huge. So it's like they would probably want to slow any progress on that front because obviously it's less money for anyone involved in the real estate game, which Trump himself is involved in. So you always got to try and keep these things in mind, how the market's going to go. What I would say, again, doesn't matter political affiliation, you trade the market you have, not the one you want, is the old saying. And ultimately with the automation and options autopilot, I've just been letting things run, and it's worked out. So I've got one ES on right now. I had two close last week, I think it was. Maybe it was Monday and maybe it was Friday. So this is the new one that went on. One of the crude oils closed. So this was a profit take. And then this was a new position that went on last Tuesday. That's just how it's scheduled. This was a profit take. This was a profit take. And then again, it opened a new one Tuesday on the 12th. I guess this closed on the 11th and that closed on the 8th. So these both hit profit. I guess we can go check in on autopilot and see where we're at for ES. And this is all accurate stats. Win rate 100%. That's obviously not always going to be the case, and it was a little bit probably benefited from a few tactical moves I did in terms of adding the strategies on. But in the past couple months, I've literally just let it run. These all just hit their profits. So $536.25, $601. Again, 37, almost 38 days in the trade, 34 days. So imagine you're able to make $600 or $1,100 every basically month, and you're using approximately $12,000 in capital. So it's like you're making a 10% return, 8 to 10%. Again, there's no guarantee of this. Obviously, there can be losses, right? But that's just how it works. I mean, this one was a $700 profit. That one took early, closed early. So this is just how I have it set up, still just doing the same strategies here. Also, I mean, quick aside, you can see you get this pop-up notification for Schwab. For some reason, Schwab only allows you to keep access for 7 days and you have to refresh it yourself. That's one of the reasons I don't use Schwab as much anymore, both because we can use futures options on TastyTrade, and then you don't have to deal with that. It's not that hard to do. It's just kind of annoying, and you don't have the futures options ability that you do with TastyTrade. So that's one of the reasons I've kind of not really traded much through Schwab more recently. But you can see I basically still have these ones going, just these four at the moment. Gold I've turned off, which probably stupid on my part. I could have been making more money, but I just decided to turn it off. I'll probably turn it back on, but like I've talked about before, I probably won't I was doing the put spreads, just the systematic put spreads. I would probably switch to maybe some butterflies or broken wing butterflies when I turn it back on. So just quick check in. This is the year game we've had so far, and obviously always keep this in mind, fees and commissions. So basically about $1,400 of commissions so far year to date, which is not insignificant, right? I mean, it's basically 10% of your profit going to commissions, which is pretty annoying, but that is just how it is. It's also nice to just be able to sit back and have the automation make you money. So there is a cost to that. I think TastyTrade reduced their fees, and keep in mind that futures have a lot higher fees in general. I think that they're theoretically reducing them. I think they did a month ago or so, but you can just kind of see what's working. Obviously, a lot of the ES stuff has worked this year. Most of the, took loss during tariffs, and that had drawdown from MES. Also had a drawdown, I think, during tariffs from bonds, but just keeping the bonds running. I actually increased my allocation to the bond strategy, which is the 111. I have, I believe, 2 on, and the reason I did that, again, this is a little bit of discretion, but in general, my plan is to have a fairly balanced allocation or even split to each one. As I increased my money to this account, I didn't necessarily change the overall allocation of these strategies, and I basically wanted to increase to bonds and S&P 500 to almost make it more like a 50-50 portfolio would be. So that's kind of why I did that, because I think we're going to be in a range of headlines of inflation or maybe even declining inflation. I think that's going to give a bid to bonds. So I think it'll at least be in a more reasonable range, hopefully a little bit less volatility. I don't know why this chart is not. Seems like the futures are doing okay in terms of maybe updating correctly. But we can just kind of see, I'm assuming it's going to stay more in this type of range that it's already had for the rest of the year. My hope is that if they're dropping rates, it will get a bid, and I should be good on all my 111 trades. If not, I've gotten stopped out before, somewhat annoyingly, but the other ones then will hit profit. So it's just a matter of letting it run and letting it go. So that's just the benefit of the automation, and why I set it up, and Zach and I kind of created that system, because the better thing is just doing it and not manually watching the market, because then you end up doing stuff that maybe you shouldn't, and that is always a struggle for anyone trading, myself included. So it's better to just kind of know that your system will work and then just let it go, because there are structural inefficiencies with options, and that's what we're exploiting here. So in general, that's kind of the update. Bitcoin, again, the market, the chart's not going to show, but Bitcoin breaking out, kind of pulling back. In general, I think it's not going to drop below 100,000 unless there was some really weird event that happens, in my opinion. So I do think that the overall direction is flat to higher. Again, I do think there's a lot of pro-crypto stuff going on in the administration, because they seem to be very aligned with those companies. So again, we're just kind of trading what they are going to probably push. And naturally the 111 is, or the put spread is technically bullish. We're just kind of selling volatility around that, and the direction is up. So that's what we're trading at this point. So that's pretty much it. Again, I would definitely recommend and encourage people to attend the live webinar on Thursday, 7 p.m. Central. The link is going to be in the description below. Look forward to seeing everybody there, and there's going to be a very good deal on Options Autopilot if you are wanting to automate these trades and just make your life a lot easier. In my opinion, of course, I'm biased, but I literally created this originally for myself so I can trade while I'm working and I don't have to pay attention to these things. And we tried to make it so it can help people who are either new to options, or they know options and they know that this should work, as long as they just let it go over time. And yeah, we'll see you there, and appreciate everyone. Hopefully this is helpful. Feel free to share it with anyone that you think would benefit from it, and we will see you in the next one. Take care.